So why, therefore, should we constrict our own selves and our souls? The obligation upon the ummah, na'am. So why should we restrict our own souls and obligate upon the ummah that which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not obligate them with, and nor did the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam obligate them with? They have no avenue except to say that indeed, meaning that this is the only avenue that they have, the shubha that they bring, or the doubt that they bring for their moon site calculations. They say that the reason why we use them is because the Muslims, they differ over the beginning of the month of Ramadan. They're always different. So France, the people of France will differ from the Muslims in France, will differ from the Muslims in Britain. And the Muslims in Egypt will differ from the Muslims in Pakistan, for example. So to avoid that differing, where different people are fasting on different days, their argument is, if we use the calculations, then the whole ummah knows we all begin on that day, because the scientists cannot be wrong in their calculations. So this is the reason that they use. So Shaykh al-Fawzān, he answers this. He said, in answer to this, that they claim that the beginning of the month, the Muslims, they differ. And at the end of the month, the Muslims, they differ. And it causes differing and confusion amongst them. Then we say to them, no. This does not cause confusion at all. And there is no confusion or disorder in the affair. We say to them, do all of the Muslims in the world pray at the same time? Answer us, he said, answer us. Do all of the Muslims in all of the earth pray at the same time? He said, no, of course they do not pray at the same time. It is based upon the regions that they live in and the countries that they live in. This is what they base their prayer upon. So they do not pray all of them at the same time. Because dhuhr here is not the same as dhuhr in America. And the dhuhr in America is not the same as dhuhr, for example, in Mexico or in South America. The prayer in Africa, in some parts of Africa, differs from the prayer in different parts of Africa. So they don't all pray dhuhr at the same time. Some of them, hours difference. Because they live in different parts of the continent or different parts of the earth. So, in that case, with regard the fasting itself, we say that if we, sumu fi waqtin wahid, fast on a single day. And by saying that, meaning that this is what they say, then why with regard to fasting are we to say that we should all fast on one day when we don't even pray at the same time, all of us? Rather, these people, they burden the ummah with something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not burden them with. And the unity of the Muslims will not be obtained and will not be attained by fasting and beginning Ramadan, its fast on the same day. And nor will the unity of the ummah be attained by the end of the first of the month of Ramadan and all having Eid on the same day. Do these people actually believe by doing so that the ummah will be united because of that? He said rather, the unity of the ummah is attained through tawheed and the correct aqeedah. The ummah is not disunited except due to the fact that there are people in this ummah who hold an aqeedah which is batila. They are following false creeds and they are upon misguided sects. This is what has divided the ummah. It has got nothing to do with us differing on the beginning of Ramadan or the end of Ramadan. This is not it. Because the Muslims will differ on the beginning of Ramadan and the end of Ramadan just as they differ, so long as they follow the Sunnah, just as they differ on the beginning of Dhuhr and the beginning of Asr between two different countries. There are hours between them. So likewise, the beginning of Ramadan and the end of Ramadan will differ based upon which part of the world that you're in. Whether the moon is seen in that part of the world or whether the moon is not seen in that part of the world. So the Muslims may differ with regard to that, just as they differ with the prayer. So this is something that was present even in the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and it is an affair that is bound to happen. It is bound to happen. So the Muslims are not divided except due to the corruption in their aqeedah, yarhamakallah, and due to the fact that they are upon innovations, and they introduce things into the religion that are not from the religion. This is what has divided the Muslim ummah. This is why the Muslims are divided. So why don't these people, instead of focusing upon moon sight calculations and when the Muslims should fast and end their fast, why don't they dedicate their efforts and their striving in this affair? Why don't they set up nadawat and mu'tamarat? Why don't they set up these meetings and these conferences and these gatherings for the rectification of the aqeedah and the clarification of tawheed and forbidding from shirk and warning against bid'ah? And if they were truthful and they truly had concern that the Muslims should be united, then they would do that. As for them, just giving, every year you see them appearing, once a year, giving importance to the crescent moon and its appearance for the start of the month. So these people, this is the only time that you see them. And from this, they intend that the Muslims will be united somehow, because they are all now fasting on the same day. That's going to unite the grave worshipper with the muwahhid. That's going to unite the tablighi with the Sunni or the Khariji. This is going to unite the ummah just because the Khariji and tablighi began their Eid on the same day, or they started Eid on the same day, or they began their Ramadan. This is going to unite the ummah all of a sudden. It shows the shallowness of their argument. This will not unite the Muslims. And it will never unite the Muslims. That which will unite the Muslims is that they are gathered upon a united belief, a united aqeedah, and that they abandon the astray sects that have divided the unity of the Muslims. And upon that he concludes this hadith. How long before Maghrib? This is the question to Shaykh ibn Uthaimīn rahimahullah ta'ala, where he was asked, there are people who call for the united moon sighting in every place. And some of them, they say, let us unite with the moon sighting of Mecca in the desire to unite the ummah for the start of the blessed month of Ramadan and other than Ramadan. So what is your opinion regarding this? So you can see the same argument, but this time it's coming from a different aspect. That now it's not about calculations. It's about, let's choose one city, Qura, the mother of all cities, Mecca, and let all of the Muslims begin their fast when Mecca begins its fast. So when Mecca sights with the sighting of the eye, then all of the Muslims should follow that sighting, and that will bring about, and that will aid the unity of the Muslims. So Shaykh al-Fawzān was asked this question. So his first answer to that is, he said, just merely from the aspect of looking at the astronomy and the celestial bodies in the sky and the moon, this is an impossibility. This is an impossibility. Because the appearance of the new moon, as Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah said, differs by the consensus of the Muslims and by the consensus of the experts in this science, that the moon sightings, they differ from place to place. And since its appearance differs from place to place, then according to the textual proofs and investigative proofs, meaning both from the text and from investigation and from science, each land must have its own ruling. Meaning, when you know that the moon sighting will by necessity differ from land to land, continent to continent, country to country, you know that will occur by ittifaq. All of the people agree that the moon sighting differs. And especially those who are the specialists in the science or specialists in the celestial bodies of the sky. And they look at the planets and the moon. They know that the rising and the setting of the moon in the month and the waxing and waning of the moon differs from place to place. So therefore, and also by textual evidences of the Quran and Sunnah, every land therefore must have its own ruling. He said, as for the textual proof, then that is the statement of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, where Allah said, فَمَنْ شَهِدَ مِنْكُمُ الشَّهْرَ فَلْيَصُمْهُ. And whomsoever from amongst you sees the new moon for the beginning of the month, then let him fast, meaning Ramadan. So if it happens that people in the furthest part of the earth did not see the new moon, meaning that they are far away from Mecca, from the other side of the dunya, from Mecca, and they did not see the new moon where they are, but the people of Mecca sighted it, then how can this verse of the Quran be applied to those who did not sight it in their country and no one in their land or their continent sighted it? How can this ayah apply to them when in their land it was not possible for them to see? Likewise, the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ that we already mentioned, start the fasting of the month of Ramadan with the sighting of the new moon and end the month of Ramadan with the sighting of the new moon, the hadith in Bukhari and Muslim. So, if the person from the people of Mecca sees the new moon, for example, how can the man in Mecca obligate the people of Pakistan? For example, Shaykh ibn Uthaimīn says here, and likewise those people are further east than Pakistan. How can they be obligated with a moon sighting in Mecca when the people of the whole of that land, meaning Pakistan or India or Bangladesh or even further east, Indonesia and Malaysia, that they did not see the moon? So they are obligated by the sighting of Mecca? He said, no, this is not correct. And then he explains that further. He said, and we know that the hilal, that it does not rise and appear in the horizon in their land. Meaning in their land it doesn't appear in the horizon, but it appears in Mecca, because in their horizon the new moon cannot be seen. And then he said, and the Prophet ﷺ, he connected the moon sighting with the visual sighting of the eyes. So he mentioned alongside the knowledge that the new moon did not rise in their horizon, in their lands. Why? Because each land, because of the distances between them, the moon rises at different times. Maybe a day ahead or a day before, depending on where you are in the world. So that is something that is known. So therefore, one land cannot bind another land to follow it. And the Prophet ﷺ, that he tied the beginning of Ramadan with the sighting of the moon, and if the moon is concealed due to cloud cover, then to complete 30 days, not to base it upon calculations. Not to base it upon calculations, and nor is one land obligated with a moon sighting from another land unless both of those cities come under the same rising of the moon. If the cities come under the same rising of the moon because it is part of one land, like Mecca, Medina, Riyadh and so on, then no harm. Even if they are different countries, but they are next door to each other. So they are so close to each other that when the moon rises in one, it is also rises in the other one because they are so close. But if there's thousands of miles difference between a country, or many hundreds of miles distance between two countries, like the example that Shaykh ibn Uthaimīn mentioned, between Mecca and Pakistan, or Mecca and Indonesia, or Malaysia, and other countries such as this, then it is quite conceivable, and in fact it is a reality, that the moon does not rise at the same time in both of these locations. And then he mentioned, as for the dalil which is nadari, as for the dalil which is investigative and scientific, and he said, and that is the qiyas which is sahih, which is a correct analogy and a sound analogy, that it is not possible for anyone to contradict. He said, let us look. He said, for us, we know that dawn appears from the east of the earth before the west every morning. So he's talking about where he is, in Qasim or in Saudi Arabia. He said the dawn appears from the east of the earth before the west. He said that is something that is known. So if the dawn appears in the direction of the east, then are we, meaning dawn has appeared in the east over there, maybe 500, 600, 1,000 miles away, because that's where dawn appears first. Sun rises from the east and it sets in the west. So the dawn has appeared on that side, so Fajr has begun. So for them, they have to stop eating, right? Because it's Fajr for them. They can't carry on eating. They've seen Fajr has begun, so they have to stop eating. So Shaykh Ibn Uthaimīn said, are we bound by what they have seen over there in Saudi, whilst we are still in the middle of the night? We are still in the depths of the night. They've seen dawn begin. Are we bound in Mecca or in Riyadh by what they saw in Indonesia? Because they've seen Fajr begun, so someone rings from Indonesia to Mecca and says, Fajr has begun, stop eating. What do you mean stop eating? It's 1 o'clock in the morning here. Right? Why? Because Fajr begins there before it begins in Saudi Arabia. So then the sun continues. So Fajr comes and dawn comes later on. So he said, of course we are not obligated. So when the sun sets to the east of the earth, however for us in Saudi Arabia, it is still daylight, meaning that the sun will set earlier in Indonesia because they're ahead in time before it does in Saudi Arabia. So now, are we obligated to break our fast the same time as them? He said, of course not. Are we supposed to break our fast? Someone rings you from Indonesia, says, Maghrib over here, break your fast. He said, do we break our fast because of their sighting? He said, of course not. Because when it is Maghrib there, it is still Dhuhr over here. So we are not bound by that. So he said, therefore the Hilal, the crescent moon, is like the sun completely. The moon and its sighting is like the sun completely. So the timings of the new moon are monthly, whereas the timings of the sun are daily. But other than that, there is no difference. You live your life, meaning your ibadah, by the daily motion of the sun. Dhuhr, Asr, Maghrib, Isha, Fajr. By the way that the sun is moving around the earth. So that's how you do your daily obligations of prayer. With regard to the moon goes on a monthly cycle. So therefore, things like Hajj, Iddah, Ramadan, then they follow the monthly cycle. But other than that, the principle is exactly the same, he said. So he said, so the timings of the new moon are monthly, whereas the timings of the sun are daily. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned in the Quran, أُحِلَّ لَكُمْ لَيْلَةَ الصِّيَامِ الرَّفَثُ إِلَى نِسَائِكُمْ. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made permissible for you in the nights of Ramadan, of the fasting month of Ramadan, to have sexual relations with your wives. هُنَّ لِبَاسٌ لَكُمْ وَأَنْتُمْ لِبَاسٌ لَهُنَّ. They are your wives are an enveloping garment for you, and you are an enveloping garment for them. علم الله أنكم كنتم تختانون أنفسكم. And Allah knows that you used to deceive yourselves. فَتَابَ عَلَيْكُمْ وَعَفَا عَنْكُمْ. So Allah accepted your tawbah and Allah forgave you. فَالْآنَ بَاشِرُوهُنَّ وَابْتَغُوا مَا كَتَبَ اللَّهُ لَكُمْ. So now you may have sexual relations with them in the night and seek that which Allah has ordained for you of children. وَكُلُوا وَاشْرَبُوا حَتَّى يَتَبَيَّنَ لَكُمْ الْخَيْطُ الْأَبْيَضُ مِنَ الْخَيْطِ الْأَسْوَدِ مِنَ الْفَجْرِ. And eat and drink up until it becomes clear to you the white thread from the black thread of Fajr, of the dawn. ثُمَّ أَتِمُّ الصِّيَامَ إِلَى اللَّيْلِ. then complete the fasting up until the night. وَلَا تُبَاشِرُوهُنَّ وَأَنْتُمْ عَاكِفُونَ فِي الْمَسَاجِدِ. But do not have any relationship with your wives whilst you are making i'tikaf in the masjid. تِلْكَ حُدُودُ اللَّهِ. That is the limits of, those are the limits ordained by Allah. فَلَا تَقْرَبُوهَا. And do not approach those limits. كَذَلِكَ يُبَيِّنُ اللَّهُ آيَاتِهِ لِلنَّاسِ لَعَلَّهُمْ يَتَّقُونَ. And in this manner, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes clear to you His signs, makes clear His signs to the people, so that they may attain piety. And this is, and likewise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned, فَمَنْ شَهِدَ مِنْكُمُ الشَّهْرَ فَلْيَصُمْهُ. And whomsoever from amongst you sights the new moon for the beginning of Ramadan, then let him fast. Shaykh ibn Uthaimīn said in the last sentence here, or in the last two sentences, he said, so both the textual and the scientific proof necessitates that we make that for every place there is its own specific ruling, which is connected to the beginning of the month of Ramadan and the end of the month of Ramadan. That is connected to signs that are physical, that one is physically able to see. And that is the sighting of the new moon for the beginning of Ramadan and the sighting of the new moon for the end of the month of Ramadan. And if one does not sight it, then he completes the 30 days of Sha'ban. And if he does not sight it for Ramadan, then he completes the 30 days of Ramadan. And he said, and this is what the Prophet ﷺ established. This is what Allah's Messenger ﷺ established for this ummah in his sunnah. And that is the sighting of the moon that is witnessed, and the sighting of the sun that is witnessed, meaning the sighting of the moon that is witnessed for the beginning of Ramadan, and the sighting of the sun that is witnessed for the end of the day itself, so your fast finishes, and the beginning of the day when your fast begins. So the sun and the moon, both of them are utilized in the month of Ramadan. The moon for the beginning of Ramadan and the end of Ramadan, and the sun for the beginning of the fasting day, and the sun for the end of the fasting day. And for each country where the people live that is distant from another land, then they do not rely upon the sighting of another land. They rely upon the sighting of their own land, because of the rising of the sun and the moon differs from land to land. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. Walhamdulillah.